Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Kenai Peninsula in southern Alaska. This huge jut of land pokes into the Gulf of Alaska and extends toward Kodiak Island. It has some high mountains in the southeast of the peninsula, but near Soldotna is a low elevation plain that gently rolls into the Cook Inlet. The towns here push into the forest, which consists of birch, hemlock, and spruce trees. Common animals here include moose, porcupines, and hares. The predators on the peninsula are much more diverse, with weasels, foxes, lynx, and coyotes rounding out the smaller meat-eaters. The larger ones are much more dangerous and include wolves, black bears, and brown bears. The Kenai River originates at Kenai Lake, which is fed by the Russian River. It flows for about 50 miles as the crow flies and empties into the Cook Inlet near the town of Kenai. The salmon that migrate upstream begin their lives as fry, which grow in Kenai and Skilak Lakes before making their way to the sea for a few years. Upon their return, the salmon continue a flow of nutrients from the land to the sea and back again that sustains brown bears, as well as many other plants and animals in the ecology. This cycle on the Kenai Peninsula has supported over 600 brown bears. But these bears are genetically isolated and are trending downward in numbers, according to recent assessments. They have a unique gene pool among brown bears, which would be a pity to see go extinct. Just a little east of Soldotna is a town called Funny River. It is a dot of a town, which doesn't seem like a town at all, but more of an incorporated area. Around mile marker 11 of the Funny River Road that runs through town, a 62-year-old man named Danny High had his home on an acreage. One of his favorite things to do was to take the dogs for a walk and enjoy the fresh air and beautiful scenery the Kenai River offers. Now, Danny's acreage was at an interesting location on Funny River Road. To the south is land owned by varying federal, state, and tribal agencies, which is left in its natural state. Here, brown bears can travel freely and fight and mate and do all the normal bear stuff. To the west and the east of Danny's property, housing developments and busy roads crowd the bears' access to the Kenai River and the salmon that they pull from it. But right near Danny's property, development thins, and access to the river is much easier for the bears. To find similar access to the river, the bears would have to go 6 miles to the east, just to avoid human development. This bottleneck in travel corridors creates a funnel for hungry bears and leads them on a path right to Danny's and his neighbors' doorsteps. On September 13, 2015, around 4:30 p.m., Danny was out walking the dogs along one of the many four-wheeler roads that crisscross the area. The trails make the perfect escape into the trees that surround the residential developments. Brown bears are a frequent sight on these trails, but locals are so used to being near them that their presence isn't even alarming. On his hike, Danny didn't bring a firearm, nor did he bring along bear spray. Danny was such a good neighbor, he would frequently take his neighbor's dog for a walk. The dog's name was Layla, and her owner was named Diane Deming. After Danny picked up Layla from Diane's house, the two of them disappeared into the labyrinth of quad trails for a quick escape. Diane knew they wouldn't be long, and expected them to return in about 30 minutes or so. Danny enjoyed one of the benefits of pet ownership without the responsibility of taking care of one. He often took Layla out for walks, and she seemed to enjoy them too. After he spent some time relaxing in the woods, the two of them would go back and resume their lives as usual. But today would turn out to be very different from most days. As Danny and Layla made their way into the nearby trees, another denizen was also using the quad trails. A huge brown bear was likely making his way along the Kenai River in search of salmon carcasses or berries to pack on weight for hibernation. It was mid-fall now, and if the bear didn't have enough calories, it might not make it through the winter, so every calorie mattered. At this point of the fall, bears are in a state called hyperphagia, which is a hormonal state of intense hunger and desire for food. They are known to cover much broader swaths of territory in search of food sources, and will sometimes seek food from sources they wouldn't consider in prior seasons of the year. If the berry season was poor, or the salmon run was meager, then bears would have no option but to push in closer to town in search of food. As Danny and Layla walked down the quad trail, at some point they crossed paths with this massive brown bear. The details of just how this run-in occurred have not been relayed or made public. The results of the incident left Danny with grievous injuries and sent Layla dashing back to Diane. At 4:36 p.m., Diane heard Layla scratching at the back door. Before she could let Layla in, she heard her scratching at the front door. Diane hurried back toward the front door and let Layla inside, but Danny wasn't with her. Diane thought that perhaps he'd let her run ahead of him, so she glanced down the road, but couldn't see Danny. After a few minutes, her questions were answered, as emergency vehicles began to blare their sirens and converge on a nearby location. There was no way Diane could know, but a brown bear had attacked Danny while he and Layla were out for a walk. After Danny was severely injured, he somehow managed to pull out his cell phone and call 911. The sirens Diane heard were responding to his own request for help. First responders were sent out to the attack location at 4:45 p.m., and the first unit arrived by 4:58 p.m. Although their description of Danny's injuries was not detailed, they were described as very serious. It took the paramedics only 5 minutes to request a medical helicopter to Danny's location. It ferried him to a hospital in Anchorage, where he was held in critical condition. Danny went through his first surgery there on Monday. With injuries beyond their scope of care, the hospital in Anchorage arranged for an emergency medical flight, which took Danny to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, Washington. After arriving at Harborview, additional surgical procedures would be completed to close and repair tissue damage the bear had done to Danny. Wildlife officers quickly converged on the attack site and searched for the bear responsible for Danny's mauling. Even though the search was thorough, it was fruitless in finding a bear in the area. Authorities decided to adopt a strategy of waiting out the bear to see if it would return and pose further risks to residents of the area. After the bear didn't return, they concluded that the attack was likely defensive, and the bear didn't have predatory motives in attacking Danny. According to Danny's wife, his recovery was slow but steady. Given his proximity to town and access to immediate medical attention, his life was saved. Events could have ended up very differently for him if he were only a few miles away from the resources needed to save his life. From the time Danny left Diane's house with Layla to the point he called 911, only 6 minutes had elapsed. He was located a quarter mile from his home, which means most of that 6 minutes was spent walking with Layla and not being attacked by the bear. In only a few seconds, this bear did enough damage to Danny's body to threaten his life, in a location that would make the thought of this scenario unlikely. Due to the rapid response and availability of medical attention, he survived. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think bear spray would have prevented this attack? I kinda doubt it. Do you think Layla's presence may have been a contributing factor in the attack? Is the development around Kenai River an example of poor planning? The next time you take your dog out for a walk in the woods, will you be packing bear spray or a firearm? I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.